rather than trying to figure something out on your own and spending 5 years to it, you can just do it in 10 minutes by leveraging the expert that knows how to do it.
Okay. So it might be that I make a choice to use my time differently by leveraging an expert, right? Okay. And the fourth one, Wade's favorite. Wade, what's cultivating strategic partners mean?
It means creating relationships with people who are like-minded and pointing in the same direction as you.
Yes. And one of the ways that we add value to the lives of the people around us is by teaching these principles, right, in a natural way. But we don't know what principles, we don't know what value to add in that moment to someone's life if we don't know what's going on with them. So we need to be able to ask questions and we need to be able to listen. So for this exercise, there's someone that's getting a piece of paper that tells them something about themselves, and the other person gets to ask questions to find out about them. And at the end, we'll talk about how that may or may not apply to what kind of value you can add. Yes? Yeah. Okay. Oh, right? Yeah. Oh, I'm always random about my selections. Right? Oh, no, actually, I can't actually give you that one.
Make me cry.
Yeah. I'm not gonna make Dawn cry. Again. You need a scenario, huh? You need a scenario. Shut up. There you go. Okay, everyone's got a scenario? Okay, you got about 5 minutes-ish. I'll let you know to ask questions. Whoever doesn't have a piece of paper in hand, start asking some questions. Yes.
No, go ahead.
Oh, you're just stretching? You have a question?
Yeah, no, no,
Okay, so ask questions to find out information about the person that you're talking to. Information that you think might be helpful to know if you wanted to think about how you could add value to their life in one of these ways. You're trying to just learn more about Tony. Learn more about Tony that would allow you to say, wow, okay, here's a way that I could maybe help you get some expert advice. Okay? Or here's a way. So for you, it's really just get to know Tony. That's your goal. Just get to know Tony.
I don't know.
What am I supposed to do? Just get to know Sue.
Well, I have to ask her question.
Yeah, you're the question answer. Dawn's getting to know Bob. He's asking, you're asking his questions about him. I've just given him some additional facts about him that he may or may not share with you.
Okay.
So just so we're clear, you're asking questions. I've just added some facts to Dawn's life that you may or may not find out about. Okay, so you're asking questions. We'll get to know Cindy, and I just added some facts to Cindy's life.
So here I have a very I don't have
So instead of
my own their parents. And I'm talking about not necessarily things, about me.
Just look, no, just keep doing what you're doing. I'm just looking at your, pay attention to him, he's asking you questions. I'm just looking at your face.
It was like thousands of why not?
You know, we were trying to make even though to release the lives for you to like so they would come from the show their education and their
It's gonna feel like every day.
Yeah. So, you know, from my experience, you know, somebody that would just sit down.
How many sisters do you have?
And so there's an opportunity. Yeah.
You're the oldest.
So I just
Because I told the kids, you know,
After you would do that.
so now change our habits, change our you know, start really how to meeting people to be sure it's a lot. It's a big step. It's a lot.
Yeah, we remember. Year one. But you said yeah. Oh, but I have. Okay, keep my hand on.
Stay back home, things.
Or you go.
I started seeing
Yeah.
she started bringing
Right.
the other day she asked me and this question
Yeah, one more minute.
so to this day,
Wrap up where you are in the conversation.
So you kind of.
even though the important is now they just like start seeing
like you see the dark clouds coming. If it rain or not, you cover it, right? And there's this thing that you say, instead of just
Okay, crew. So you can go back to your seats. Okay, Wendy, tell me in sort of like a bullet list, everything you learned about Sydney in that conversation.
I learned that she is
That's your paper.
that she is newly divorced, that she has 2 children, 2 boys, that she's a single mother, and that she's starting over.
So where did you get that language she's starting over from?
Because, well, since she's a newly divorced, you know, usually when you're divorced, you kind of start all over again because you have to change your lifestyle to your new situation. Her being a single mother, I guess she's been a single mother.
Did you use the word starting over, or did Cindy use the word starting over? Where'd you get that word from?
Well, I told her she's starting from the beginning again, and she said starting over.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. Is there anything, Cindy, about you that you intended for Wendy to know? Did she miss anything?
Well, her first question was are you married? Kind of busted everything open on these topics on the paper. So from there, she kind of pieced together, oh, well, then that should mean this and this and this.
Okay, and given that information, Wendy, which of these principles do you think could help Cindy?
Out of all 4 of them,
Yeah, what do you gravitate towards?
by being an expert.
Okay, in what way?
If she's like used to like having a certain income in her like life with her husband or her ex-husband, and now she has to like, reevaluate like what her new situation is. Or I would do number 4 too, because she would surround herself around like people who've been through the situation, through going a divorce, like single mothers.
Yeah, so those are really helpful. Did you actually talk about those things with Cindy? No. What did you actually talk about with Cindy?
She started asking me questions.
What's the words that you said? Starting
Over?
Starting over. Does anything here remind you of starting over?
The opposite.
Oh, that's first one.
Walking in advances. So part of when we add value, part of the reason we want to listen is because we may know these, but in that moment, the principle that you actually talked about was lacking in advances. See, part of adding value is adding value in the conversation that you're having at the moment that you're having it, where the person is. And we can't get there if we're not really open to listening and learning more. Now, it may be that another 5 minutes of conversation and Cindy would have talked about, you know, and I'm trying to juggle the new income and I'm not really sure, and a leveraging expert, right, conversation could make sense. But that's part of what we're doing, right, is we're listening for when we're adding value and we're listening, where are we adding value in the moment that makes sense for that person with the conversation that we're having. Did you want to ask something? No. Okay. Alvita, who are you talking to? Dawn. What did you learn about Dawn?
That she's a single parent and she doesn't know what to do because she needs to start over. And since she doesn't know where to start and doesn't even know how to start, and if she would to start, she would know which way to go. And I started a conversation after a couple of questions, and I started giving her my story, and I used my daughter to get her prepared so she could listen in life. I asked my daughter, "You wouldn't like this to happen to you and your kids, right?
Yeah.
And if it was to happen, what would you do?"
Yeah.
I was telling her what I would tell. I was using my daughter to tell her so she could, like, oh.
Right, so you were connecting to her through your own story. How long has Dawn been single? Recently. How's she feel about it?
She's very stressful and very upset.
What part is she most upset about?
Financial.
Did she tell you that?
No, but not exactly, but she kind of said something. I don't I remember what she said, but I feel it was Spanish.
So you made assumptions about what she's most upset about.
Mm-hmm.
What if she's most upset about being alone? Would you know that?
We didn't touch that.
So there's more to a person's story than the facts that are on a piece of paper. And it's so easy for us when we've been through a similar experience to make assumptions about what that person might be feeling. So using our own experiences is a great way of connecting, and we have to be careful because our own experiences aren't always exactly applicable to the person we're talking to. So we often have an opportunity to get more information to see where it may or may not be applicable, right? We have a tendency to go to our story, but by not finding out first, you could say to yourself, boy, the most stressful part of that is the financial part. Dawn, what's the most stressful part for you? Because we don't actually know whether that is the most stressful part for Dawn. And it might be that she says, I just don't know what I'm going to do with the kids. That's the most stressful part. And now you have an opportunity to focus your experience on the part that's most meaningful to Dawn. Whereas the alternative is she listens to you and she appreciates what you're saying, but in her head she's like, yeah, the financial stuff, I mean, it's stressful, but it's not nearly what's keeping me up all night. And we've lost an opportunity to make a stronger, deeper connection and stronger, deeper impact. Make sense? Bella, I have a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to be yanked off. I got the key. Bella, what'd you learn about Sue?
I learned that Sue has 3 sisters and 1 brother. She's the oldest. She's closest to her sister Betsy because they're closer in age and they like the same type of things. I asked her what she likes to do on her time off, and I found out that Sue actually likes to read novels. Mostly political novels because there's a point to them. There's something that she can learn from them. And then I also learned that I asked her, what kind of music she liked. And she said she liked country music, and I asked her why country music. And the reason being is because there's a story, it tells a story. It doesn't necessarily mean that she went through that story or that was her story. It's just maybe something, that she could relate to, and it was something probably that was going on at that time.
Do you feel like you know a little bit more about Sue?
Not at all.
Not at all.
I mean, I do know more about her, but I wish I would have. There's so much more that I'm within these questions. There's so much more depth than just what I found out today.
Well, you had a 5-minute conversation. I mean, you only had 5 minutes. Do you feel like in those 5 minutes you learned something about Sue that you didn't know?
Everything today I learned from her I didn't know.
It's pretty interesting, right?
Yeah.
So what can you do in the next conversation with what you learned?
Ask her more questions in depth about why she's closest to her sister Betsy and why country music and why these novels versus other novels.
So Monday morning when you come in to hang out and you see Sue, you're like, hey Sue, so tell me, so why is it that you're so close to Betsy? So that's the first thing you're gonna say to her? Oh, okay. So what are you gonna say to Sue?
I don't
Right,
know.
you both got your coffees, you're like, you got 5 minutes.
What did you learn about Sue? Because I learned something about Sue that you told me.
A lot of things, actually.
I learned a lot of things. But in this exercise,
What did you learn about Sue? Brett, what did you learn about Sue?
why does Sue like reading political novels? You said it.
You told us. Let's write it down.
There's a point to them. There's something that can be.
Why does Sue like country music?
It's a story that you can possibly relate to.
What does Sue like?
Stories,
That?
novels,
No. What does she like?
political novels.
No. What does she like? Do you learn something that's not valuable to you?
Did I learn something?
Do you learn something if you're not interested in gardening and someone tells you a gardening story, are you going to say you learned something about gardening?
Yeah.
Really? You pay attention to something when you're not interested in it?
No.
So do you learn something when you're not paying attention?
No.
So Sue likes learning. She likes reading political novels because she can learn something from them. She likes country music because she likes the stories that affect her. Sue likes being impacted. Sue likes having conversations that are relevant to her, that are meaningful to her. That's actually pretty important to know. Sorry, I didn't mean to but
No, that's important. Right? So again, it's what sounds like a conversation about music and books, and well, I didn't get that deep, actually has a real opportunity to have learned something very deep about a person that's important in creating a connection in the future with that particular person. Interesting, yeah. Super interesting. Okay, I got 2 minutes for one more. Don, you were asking questions?
Yep.
Okay, what'd you learn about Bob?
I learned that he was in construction, and now he's out of construction because of his back. And he'll do a number of repair jobs around homes that he can only do some repairs without getting on his back or working with his hands concrete, without working on concrete. But he'll do a lot of stuff that maybe standing up, or he likes to do electrical repairs. He's got a good skill at that.
Learn anything else?
I should have asked, I mean, just what I think would improve me from listening to people here. I made some notes about my conversation with Bob. I should have asked him what's stressful about not being able to do all the things he wants to do.
Did Bob sound stressed about it?
About what?
Did Bob sound stressed?
He didn't sound stressed.
He didn't sound stressed, so why would you ask if he was
No,
stressed?
well, I mean, what's stressful? In other words, what's uncomfortable of not being able to do those things he used to do? You know.
Did he
and
sound
what's
uncomfortable?
more? And
No, Don, this is important. Did he sound stressed and uncomfortable?
he sounded disappointed.
He sounded disappointed.
Yes.
So how would you know if he actually feels disappointed or stressed or uncomfortable?
There was a tone in his delivery, in his words and person.
Right, so you thought that, but how could you know for sure how he felt? How so you assessing his body language is still what you think.
Correct.
How do you know? How could you have known? How could you learn what he actually feels?
Unless I asked.
Ask. So the question of what is stressful about is a great question. But the first question before that is we actually have to find out if it's stressful. Right? We have an opportunity to say, that sounds disappointing to you. How has that been? And Bob has an opportunity to say, yes, it's been so disappointing. Or no, you know what? It's actually pretty cool. The question before the question. So this exercise ended up going in all different directions that we'll be refocusing on in the future because it was helpful for us as coaches to know where we have opportunities to work on. Difference between weakness, right? New language, opportunities, skills to work on feels different than my weakness. So number one is it's a skill to ask questions that make connections, that helps you learn about a person. Number two, it's a skill to listen to the answers to those questions, to think about what the next question is. Number three, we make a lot of assumptions because of our own experiences. And we can only leverage our own experiences effectively if we test and question those assumptions. And number four, there's often information that we're getting that's beyond the answer that's given. And that's that next step to being able to apply the learning, to being able to see where we can add value. So lots of opportunities over the next several weeks and months that we'll be working on these skills, that we'll be learning the skills, mastering the skills, turning the skills into habits that we can then model and teach. Questions? Additions? Thank you.
Oh, man. Good, huh? Like, it's interesting when you start breaking down this stuff, because we're all like, well, we've been talking to people forever. Like, I know how to have a conversation. And then you actually try to give language to it, and you're like, oh, wow. All right, so pivot again. Completely different meeting for the next 15 minutes. All right, so, you all excited? Like, it's like civil, right?
Or a day in my life.
What's that?
I said, or just a day in my life.
Okay, we'll start calling you Dawn.
We're having a dawn moment.
All right, so one of the things that we now, like, so the bulk of today, the bulk of what we've been working on is, can we have an impact on somebody's life, right?
Yes.
Question, can we have an impact on somebody's life? Yes. Do we have tools and resources that can fundamentally change people's lives? Yes. What's an important skill? We need to be able to listen, learn, and be able to communicate that in order to do that. Well, how do we, so once we develop those skills, how do we actually do all of this? And one of the things that
In our business,
practically in our business, is these four little lines, right? In terms of what's going on. No, it's not a date and time, right? So what this is what are we, intention. You cannot hit a target that you're not aiming for. It gives us an opportunity to start aiming for these targets. It's one thing to have a goal. It's another thing to have a game plan to be able to make it a reality. So until further notice, until we come up with a better solution, right? So we always reserve the right to change language until the language has been locked. And when the language has been locked, like, we are not changing allies, advocates, and associates. That language has been locked. But we always reserve the right to modify certain things along the way if need be. But for right now, we're talking about your CIA. Right? But it just kind of left. Right? It allows us to know our codes, our IBAs, our impact solutions, and our assets.
which is sort of your CYA.
Right? So it's a CIA, it's your CIA, right? So we're going to talk a lot about this. And going forward, it's about having something that we care for, having something we care about, having a target that we can talk about through that process. And so hopefully, because over the last couple of months we've been talking about this, I'm hoping that everybody in the room, as soon as I wrote these four numbers, these four lines down, hopefully every once in a while I want to write on this wall, hopefully you put a mental number in there and you're like 0, 1, 1, 20, whatever it is. Like, I'm hoping, I'm hopeful. I hopeful, I guess, is a better phrase, that a percentage of the room, right? I'm not assuming it's a large one, but a percentage immediately went there. But we're going to create that space. And over the next handful of weeks and months, we're going, like, one of the first goals is that we have a goal, right? Through that process. So, but one of the things that we did is we said, okay, so what we've got to do, this entire principle is, we need to get, right? We need to get wide on everything that we do. And so we sat down, so we built this tool. I'm really, really, really excited about this. So there's a handful of things that we're going to kind of chit chat about. But this is, So it's the beginning of the month. So my friend Tony, we've been having these conversations here a little bit. So Tony, so this is for November 2015. Your CIAs are 2, 3, 50. All right. So Tony and Wendy have a goal of 2 codes this month. They have a goal of 2 IBAs this month. They have a goal of 3 impact solutions this month. And they have a goal of $50,000 in assets that they find this month, right? They've already got $66,000 of assets. When they find 55, they'll get really, really close to the shirt that Wade's wearing, which is our asset builder shirt. You don't have to have a license to be able to give. We just have to get the assets. So if you want that shirt, right, the short sleeve shirt looks a lot like this. It's got a little asset builder on there. We find $155,000 that's in our managed accounts, and those assets are waiting for you, right? So step 1 is we're like, okay, great. So here's what we need to be able to do, right? Okay, so what is this? So what we want is we go, look, okay, here's what we got to do. We want 2 codes. 2 codes this month. Well, everything is about, I'm just going to go through this. Everything is about getting wine. So what we've got to do, we're sitting with Tony and Wendy, and we're like, okay, what we need to do is, I can make it bigger so we can see this. Just, okay, who's on your roster that can take and pass their exams this month? So who on your roster could take and pass their exam this month? Isaac? Grace?
And Mark.
Okay, so what is this? Well, these are 3 people that are actively talking to Tony and Wendy about the business that have finished their hours and quizzes. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not interested, 10 being absolutely, where would you say Isaac is in wanting to take the test? 9. How about Grace?
7.
And Norma?
6.
All right, we've made some movement. This is good. This is really good because we've talked about this. But now here, so now that's an arbitrary thing. What does this mean? It is arbitrary and it's not. You know these people. You know the conversations that are going on. But we've also realized something. That in having these conversations, if someone says on a scale of 1 to 10, 3 to 5 means they're open to the idea. 5 to 7 is they're interested in the idea. 7 to 9 is they're serious about the idea. 9 to 10 is that they're prioritizing the idea. I guarantee you, if you spend some time over the next week or 2 weeks or month, and you start asking questions about this, they'll fall within this scale in almost any topic. Well, I got a question. Can you take somebody from interested to prioritizing in a moment? No. And so now all of a sudden it's, right, so the identifying part is the number. The assessing is we understand that, that Isaac is prioritizing and Grace is serious or interested, right? It's on that line. So Tony gets to go, is Grace more interested than serious or more serious than interested? Because, like, y'all with me with this, right? It could be a 6.8, which rounds up to 7, or a 7.2, which rounds down to 7, right? But what that does, it starts to give us direction. One of the values of this is it allows us to start, right? So let's say Grace is serious and Norma is interested. Well, you understand that means that Tony and Wendy have someone in their business that's interested, someone that's serious, and someone that's prioritizing taking their test. But they're all on their roster, done with their hours and quizzes. Should Tony talk to Isaac a little bit differently than he's talking to Grace and talking to Norma about taking their exam this month? Well, Tony's objective with Norma is to move her from interested to where? To serious. To take Grace from serious to prioritizing. Does this make sense? So now all of a sudden, Tony and I get to sit down and go, okay, what are some of the game plans? What are some of the things that we get to do, right, with this? Here's the types of conversation. These are all skills, but Wade went through them. Writing up a list is a skill. Being able to know what you're targeting, being able to learn how to identify and assess is a skill. But the more tools we have, the more language. Now all of a sudden, Cindy, we're like, oh my gosh, it allows us to instantly start to go, I can get this done. Does that make sense? And then it allows us to, have the intention and the accountability. It allows us to go, okay, right? I talked with Tony a couple of days ago. We started working on this a bit, and Norma was a 5, and Grace was a 6, and Isaac was an 8. So he's been able to purposefully move the intention of each one of these people closer without having all of the skills, without knowing everything to do. But you start talking about being someone, right? This 1 degree more intense approach. Does this make sense? But now all of a sudden, what's interesting is when Tony and I first started this conversation about a week ago, what was your Cole's goal? 4. He wanted 4. We sat down and had this conversation, and does it make sense for Tony to have a goal of 4 codes when he's got 3 people on his roster that are actively engaged? No. Well, see, the problem is if Tony's walking around with 4, 4, 4, is he emotionally connected to 4? No. Does he believe it's going to happen? No. When it doesn't happen, does he feel good or bad? Right? He could get 2 codes and feel bad because he's convinced himself it's 4. Plus, I can't actually help him because we're not on the same page. Now I'm not like, well, you're not committed to your life enough to have 4. It's we don't have the inventory and tools to do it. Does this make sense? Right? And then the goal was 2 IBAs. Well, who's on your draft board that we can move to your roster this month? Isaac, because we actually don't have his IBA yet. Walter. Ashley. Brittany. And Ruben. Scale of 1 to 10, Isaac? 9. Walter? 7. 6. Brittany? 6. And Ruben? 5. Now all of a sudden we're like, well, so now we walk through this conversation. So Isaac actually he's done with his licensing studying, but he hasn't turned in his IBA yet. See, it's an economic hurdle that we're going through. I have a question. Can he take his test before he turns in his paperwork? No. We got to get him to turn his paperwork. But does he want to turn his paperwork? No, but he wants to take his test. So the stronger he gets at believing that he's ready to take his test, he's going to find these resources because it's the only way that can make this happen. So it allows us to align the goals and saying, okay, if we keep feeding his desire to take his test and what's going to happen, right? We start realizing who his top 10 is and where we're going to go see. If he starts realizing as soon as I get licensed, I have people to go see, how much easier is it for him to come up with the resources to be able to get the license? Now there's a direct game plan that we get to talk about that creates an alignment of where Tony and Wendy are like, oh, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to move this to a 10. Because by moving this to a 10, this will naturally move with it. Does this make sense? Well, how could Tony and Wendy know that? That's a really hard thing to know if you've never done this before, isn't it? But it's actually not that hard for me because I've been doing this a long time. But guess who now knows it? Everybody. But if I'm talking with Tony and Wendy know it. And when they do that and they drive that skill, the next thing they know, when they get in this type of a scenario again, they don't have to start convincing someone to turn in their paperwork. They have to get them ready to take and pass their test and realize that they're going to be profitable after. Because the moment we realize that we're profitable after, we do it. Why is Wade's shirt so valuable? Why is that shirt valuable?
Kind of pays him every month.
What pays him every month?
But it's in the process.
Well, why is it valuable? It's valuable because Tony has $60,000 in assets on the first of the month that they're going to pay me because he's not licensed for. And so as soon as, right, if Tony had that shirt on, if he had $155,000 in assets, as soon as he had that shirt on, all of a sudden, he's like, man, I got to wear my shirt. Sears is getting my checks. Why is that valuable? What is that?
Helps him want to be able to get his license.
So what does he have to do to get his license?
Study. and
Study.
have a test.
Does anyone like studying? Studying's not a whole lot of fun. But knowing that as soon as I pass this test, I have these assets waiting for me, that's a whole lot more fun. Does that make sense? So it creates that. Y'all with me?
Yeah.
Right? It's the same premise. It allows us to go with Walter. Can we convince Walter to do the business? No, we don't have to convince Walter to do the business. We have to clear a hurdle and move him from serious about thinking about this to prioritizing Primerica in his licensing process. Right? So it allows us to have a very specific conversation. His impact solutions are 3. Who's on your impact solution? Who's in your bullpen that we can go see? So we got Wendy's parents,
Danny,
Danny, Julio, Juanito, Jamie,
David.
David. Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, Wendy's parents willing to sit down with us? It's a 10.
Yeah.
It's only waiting for one thing. Wendy's code. The moment Wendy has her license code, we're in that house to go see. Well, why aren't we doing it before? Because we're waiting for Wendy to go. Like, that's where it goes. Right? How about Danny?
8.
8. Julio. 9. Juanito.
6.
Jamie. Huh?
Haven't been able to assess that.
Okay, well, he's a 2. He's a guy that we sat down with, saw business, we sat down with, right? Really saw value and understood what's going on, right? There was a breakdown in communication between Tony and Jamie, and then all of a sudden, then he went and bought a cashback life insurance policy and posted it on Facebook.
I would say that's lower than a 2.
He doesn't know, he didn't do it in Tony's face. He actually didn't connect what we do and what he did. He saw the value. We talked about the value of needing to do this, and he didn't connect with Tony that Tony was going to prioritize and do this for his family. He prioritized the value of needing to do something, right? There was a skill breakdown, right? But he's still in his book, and he'll go meet, he'll go through. The problem is Tony's got to move from a 2 to a 4. He's got to go. He's not open yet, but he's not that far from open because he understands the value. He's just not open yet. There's still a relationship. There's still a connection. But Tony can't take him from not open to prioritizing in a moment. He's got to get him open. This make sense? David. Fine. Right? So not open, right? Open, interested, prioritizing, serious, and prioritizing. So now we're like, okay, it's the 15th of the month. Where's our energy? What are our conversations? How do we maintain the relationships? You're seeing them, We've got 3 appointments set. Now we start realizing, we have a business that can be grown. There are folks that we're going to be able to do. And now we can start, and what they're going to be able to do is start coming up with a 1 or 2 word language of what is the game plan? We've got to increase the value. We have a credibility issue. They haven't connected with what's going on. And now all of a sudden there's clarity at the beginning of the month where Tony and Wendy are like, we know what our business looks like. And then the goal is $50,000 in assets. Well, our assets business is discovery. It's cleanup. For the most part, you're going to go in there first and you're going to gather assets. Well, this is a place to start listing where your assets are that you're going to get. Are you going to get them all today? No, we're going to find some today and get them next week. Some you're going to get 3 months from now. But there's a game plan. So now we're constantly going, here are the people, here's the assets that we're working on gathering. So at the beginning of the month, it allows Tony, Wendy, or any of us to say, not only do we have our W, we have our what goals do we have, we identify and assess where we are, and then we have a specific game plan as to how we're going to make each one of these happen. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so we will spend lots and lots and lots and lots of time on these over the next little bit. But what this will do is this will be a starting point. Guess what? We're going to be able to break down each section. This will be the beginning. This is a skill. What? Okay, I got to figure it out. Oh, this one's new. Okay, the last piece of this and we'll finish. I want you to understand, I want us to all truly understand something. Each part of these, like, we challenge us to say, hey, write down the 10, do 10, at least 10 this week, and this and that. Every one of these are skills. The ability to write down a goal, the ability to give something language is a skill. The ability to identify and assess where something is a skill. The ability to develop a specific plan is a skill. and the ability to execute that plan is a skill. They're independent skills. And you could have one of them wired and you're like, "Ooh, I got it." But we struggle with the rest. Going from writing it up to identifying in a flow is a skill. Being able to go from a flow to a game plan is a skill. Being able to go from having a game plan and actually executing it, those are all independent skills. And then the ability to run it is a skill. These aren't overwhelming. But I want to make sure that we understand that when you do these things, you're going to grow and apply it to a variety of different things. This isn't about frustration, right? This is about understanding your I am. Here's my appreciation. I'm good at this. I'm not very good at this, right? The conversation that Wade and I had, right, it was one of my favorite ones, right? It was after with John Abanias, and he was telling me what his plan was, and I'm like, great. I go, Wade, here's something to think about. And we were able to, but I was able to take what Wade was telling me, run through this process in a very, very short period of time. We have an open relationship to be able to say, hey, here's another way, here's something that might be going on, and the ability to process. So it was very, very, very quickly on, here's where you get to direct. Wade had a great plan for where he was going to go. What we were able to do, he'd done a great job here, and he'd gotten this, but it was his assessment, in my opinion, of what he thought it was and what I thought it was weren't the same, but there was a safe place to target the assessment. Once we targeted the assessment, we then could go straight back into the plan, right? Some of us don't have great identification or assessment skills. Great, that's a skill to be able to work on. The only way it works, though, is you're open to recognizing. The best compliment I can give Wade today was in that moment, he was like, he was able to hear, he had what he thought it was. His assessment dialed in. I introduced an alternative assessment, and he was able to evaluate and go, oh my gosh, I totally see where you're going from. Let go of his assessment and said, okay, I can see where this is going, and then adapted it and then developed an instant plan. It was boom, 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 right? And we were able to redirect an entire conversation. Those are skills. Does that make sense? Right? That's what we're working on. So today was phenomenal. Thank you for all of the speakers and everyone participating and everyone sharing and being open. Really, 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 really excited, right? Take a moment today. Fill this out. Oh, Brad, I don't have any code. Great. I don't care what you have. You're starting. You're starting. Where are you starting? None of us are where we want to be. None of us are where we were. If you understand this piece of paper, you are like the last thing, and then we will finish with this because this is really, 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 really important. So I'd like you all to pay attention for a second. Turn on. Turn on. Turn on. Why are you not turning on? Okay. 30 seconds. If you understood this page, you are light years ahead of anybody in this country. Anyone in this country. So yes, you might not be where you want to be. We are not where we thought we would be. But the tools and the resources we have to be able to leverage a $3 billion VC in a market that's necessary and that needs us, you're light years ahead because we have a platform and a foundation to build from. That's where our strength gets to come from. If you look at this piece of paper and you see lack, I cannot help you. If you look at this piece of paper and go, this is where we're starting, and I know I can be somewhere different in April if I apply this to my life and my business, you will be somewhere different. That is our opportunity. Let us blow out Wednesday night. We got 2 weeks left to really blow the night. The goal for our organization is 5, 8, 16, and 250, right? Everything matters. Tony and Wendy take care of their 2, 2, 3, and 50, right? That's 20% or 30% of what's going on. If every one of us step in and participate in this thing, we can make fundamental systemic change, starting in this room, and we grow from there. And I love you guys. I'm proud of you. Let's have some fun. So thanks, guys.